Hello ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're doing alright. Today we're talking about the Watchman Sentinel, the dot spec for Sentinel that does a whole lot of damage and a surprising amount of healing that's very requested in raid groups right now. So, let's talk about it. Brief scream as usual, I'm not an expert in the spec, I'm just a nerd that plays a lot of SWTOR. If I missed anything here, if you have any recommendations, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure your fellow players would appreciate it. For your tertiary stats, you want to get that 110% accuracy in PvE, and then you can just kind of get rid of it in PvP. You don't really need it. For your alacrity, looking at 7.2% alacrity, and then throw everything else into crit, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. Crit's very important in this spec, so we want as much of it as possible. For your tactical, we don't want to be running Spiteful Saber here. There is Memorial Mask, which is great in PvP situations or AoE number farming, and then Defel Splice Exchange is great for ranked PvP. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be talking about Spiteful Saber. It's kind of the training wheels way to play the spec, so what's what we're talking about in this video. If you can get this down, you can kind of figure out the rest of the tacticals. For the legendaries, the mandatory one is Dispatcher's Package. Dispatcher's Package is going to make, every time you use your Twin Saber throw, give you the next Dispatcher / critically hit, which is very important for us. It's a great way to generate our focus. And additionally, every time you critically hit with a weapon, you'll generate one focus, which is very, very nice. If you don't have this legendary, the spec kind of feels like it's suffocating the entire way you play it. It's just, you're just gasping for focus the entire time. It's not a lot of fun. So get Dispatcher's Package. It's just straight up better than the other alternatives. Now, there is some debate here. Berserker's Call is technically the best in slot here. Every time you use your Zen, you're going to increase your damage by 5% for 10 seconds. So it's basically a permanent 5% extra damage increase. This is technically best in slot, but when I've done my testing, Furious Victor is like only a hair behind. Sometimes it overperforms. It's just going to increase your melee damage at 10%. So increasing all your damage by 5% or increasing just your melee damage at 10%. For this spec, they're about the same. Furious Victor is used in like your Guardians or your Juggernauts. So if you have this sitting in your bay, you can just throw this on for right now until you bother to pick up Berserker's Call. It really doesn't matter that much. But technically, Dispatcher, mandatory, and then Berserker, technically best in slot, but you can totally use Furious Victor if you want to. For your combat style, here's what I'm going to be running. Melting Center is going to give you just awesome, massive damage on your Force Melt. I'm just going to give it a whole bunch of centering. We'll talk about that in a bit. Transcendence, awesome. Take Transcendence every time. It's a great ability. I take Cauterized Focus here. If you're doing AoE, you can totally take Flaming Waves. Or Flaming, not Waves. It's not going to give you directions. Flaming Waves for straight up AoE damage. But Cauterized Focus is going to give Trauma, which is, pretty darn nice. Additionally, Burning Center here is pretty mandatory for us. It's going to be building a whole bunch of centering for us, which we'll talk about in a hot second. Here, I personally take defensive role in most content. If you're doing PvP, you can take Adamant. It's not as good as defensive roles, big AoE defense, which is very, very nice. Moving the line here, this one is kind of dealer's choice. Zealous Ward is going to be useful if you're in PvP. Adjudicator is nice for like PvE content. If you're doing a whole bunch of AoE, you can take Trailblazer. So you can kind of pick whichever one you want here, whichever one is going to be personally, easier for you to use. Let's use that. Adjudicator is always going to be useful. Zealous Ward is situationally useful in PvP, and then Trailblazer is great for AoE. For 68, these are really dealer's choice. I like Guarded by the Force personally. You can take Blade Blitz, and if you're really good with it, you can be like avoiding, mechanics. But you have to be good with it. If you mess up your Blade Blitz and you die, that's on you. Meanwhile, Guarded by the Force is just flat out, you take 99% less damage, which is very, very nice. And finally, you can always take Force Stasis for your stun. Whichever one fits your playstyle, pick your poison. I won't be mad at you. Finally, I just take Inspired Focus here. It's going to heal you for 1% of your maximum health every time you use an ability that consumes focus. We do a lot of healing this spec, especially to ourselves. You can be healing yourself for like 6k HPS, which is kind of nuts. So I personally take Inspired Focus. You can take a look at some of these other options here, like Stoic if you really want to. But personally, I just think that Inspired Focus is just straight up better. Okay. That's a basics introduction. Let's talk about actually doing damage. Watchman is a builder spender spec. You're going to notice as we use low damaging abilities, we're going to slowly build these little yellow bubbles underneath our player health bar here. These are our focus. We generate focus with our low damaging abilities, and then we spend focus on our high damaging abilities. And our goal here is to juggle our focus between slowly building it, and we want to be juggling it so that way when we want to use our high damage abilities, we totally can. We have a couple of ways to primarily generate our focus. The first is going to be our force leap. Force leap will jump to the target. It's very, very nice. Boop. Jumps to the target. We're melee spec. It's very helpful. And we'll instantly build 3 focus. It's very, very nice. Our second way of generating focus, primarily, is our Zealot Strike. Zealot Strike generates 6 focus. So you can see here we're kind of down and out on our focus. If we use Zealot Strike, blah, we suddenly have a whole bunch of extra focus. It's a great little ability and an easy way for us to generate a lot of focus very quickly. Finally, throughout our rotation, we'll be using Force Melt. Pretty much on cooldown, Force Melt is the little dot ability. We'll talk about that in a second. That will instantly generate forward focus. It's very, very nice. So our 3 active ways of primarily generating focus are Force Leap, Zealot Strike, and Force Melt. Those are our primary ways of actively generating focus. However, there are some passive ways to generate focus as well. That is because we have our Plasma Blades here. Your burn effects have a 20% chance to build 1 focus when dealing damage. So we're going to have three dots in the target pretty much the entire time. And so that means we have like a 60% chance to generate 1 focus every second, which is pretty nice. We're going to be we're very focus demanding here. Like a needy girlfriend, this spec demands a lot of focus, all right? Plasma Blade is going to help us generate that passively. Additionally, because of our burning focus, every time you critically hit the target, at least once every 3 seconds, you will generate 1 focus. So you have about a 40% chance to generate 1 focus every 3 seconds. So that's nice. You know, if the passive works with you, it's really great. However, there will occasionally be times when you are out of your primary ways of generating focus and you have, kind of screwed the pooch here. You get unlucky, your dots aren't ticking correctly, you're just not getting lucky with your focus generation. That's fine. That's fine. It happens to everyone. If you run into this situation where your charge, Zealot Strike, and Force Melt are off or not on cooldown yet, or you're not able to use them yet, and your dots aren't ticking the way they need to, and you're not critting enough, you can totally use Strike. It's not going to shame the ancestors like it will in some other specs. It'll slowly get you back up to getting some focus. That way you can, get through the rest of the rotation. You only just have to use it like once, and then you should be able to like jumpstart the focus generation again. So if you come to a situation where your Zealot Strike, your Leap, and your Force Melt are all on cooldown, and your passives just aren't taking the way you need them to, you can totally use Strike as that final emergency way of generating focus. So let's wrap that up one more time just to make sure we're all on the same page. Primary focus generators: Leap, Zealot Strike, Force Melt. Our dots ticking, 60% chance to generate focus. Every time we crit, it's going to give us focus. And if things go terribly wrong, we're not getting lucky, we can always use Strike as an emergency way of generating focus. But that's all boring. Generating focus is boring. I want to do damage. Well, good. We all like doing big damage. I was going to say something else there, but then I couldn't put the bad language filter on the YouTube algorithm. So big damage. All right. So let's talk about doing our dots. This is a dot spec. These are damage over time abilities. That means that not all the damage is going to happen up front here. For example, with Force Melt, you're going to see if I use my Force Melt, it doesn't do a lot of damage. 4K damage. Kind of lame. Kind of very lame. But you're going to see here it's slowly ticking damage over time. You can track these dots by the debuff tray applied on the target. So you can see here throughout the entire time that this burning cauterizes on the target, my dot is ticking, and then when this cauterize wears off, the dot will stop ticking on the target. The goal is to keep our dots on the target as often as possible. Now for Force Melt, it lasts for 9 seconds, does like 17,000 damage over the course of the next 9 seconds. It's very nice. Actually, does a little bit more damage. We'll talk about that in a second. So it does 17,000 over the course of 9 seconds, but it has a 12-second cooldown, which means that there will be 2 seconds when Force Melt isn't on the target, which means that we want to be smashing Force Melt pretty much as often as possible. Between generating focus and doing straight up big damage, it's very important that we basically just smash Force Melt over and over and over again whenever it's available to us. That's our first dot, Force Melt. Our second dot is our Cauterize. Cauterize does 7,000 initial damage and then takes for 13,000 damage in the course of the next 9 seconds. However, because of our tactical, every time you use our slash, our dual saber throw, and our dispatch, which I can't use because the target's under 30% health, every time you use these abilities, you're going to see that Cauterize is refreshed, and it's going to take and do damage. So what that means is that every time you go into a fight, you're basically just going to put Cauterize on the target once, and then never worry about it again. Because it's just going to be refreshing and ticking over and over and over again. If you manage to use slash or dual saber throw or dispatch over the course of the next 9 seconds, you'll keep it on the target. It's awesome. You should basically never have this ability come off of the target. It's very nice. You set it once at the beginning of the fight, and then you never worry about it again. So these two dots are pretty straightforward, right? You hit the dot ability, the damage goes on that target, it takes place over the course of the next 9 seconds. Cauterize is refreshing over and over again. Great. Very straightforward dots, not much to really think about. But the third dot that we have is a little bit different, called Overload Saber. How Overload Saber works is that if you hit the ability, you actually haven't done damage to the target yet. Instead, you've given yourself these 3 stacks of Overload Saber, and now every time you use a melee attack on the target, you're going to see you're going to slowly build up to 3 stacks of burning Overload Saber to the target. Up to the time you hit 3 stacks, now you have all of your stacks, and it's doing a whole bunch of damage. You can see 10,000 damage a tick over the course of the next 6 seconds. So what this means is that you have to hit Overload Saber and then hit the target 3 times, and then all of your damage is being applied to the target. So, 3 dots. Force Melt, straightforward, long cooldown, hit it as often as possible. Cauterize, hit it, it'll be refreshing all the time. Overload Saber, hit it, and then hit the target 3 times, and you should be rocking and rolling with all that dot damage on the target. Now, this is a good segue to move into our Zen. You're going to notice here as I'm spending my focus, I'm slowly building up to these 30 stacks of centering. What centering does is that because of our utilities we're taking, every time that we spend focus and every time our dots critically hit, we're going to slowly build these stacks of centering up to a total of 30. When you hit 30 stacks, this little blue Jedi guy here, you will have Zen start to glow. When you use Zen, all of your dots will crit. It's awesome. It's a whole bunch of damage very, very quickly. Additionally, it will heal yourself and all of your raid members for 1% of their health for every time your dots tick, and it has 6 charges. So you will be rapidly healing yourself and all of your raid for like 18% of their health very quickly, assuming your dots are ticking correctly. It fluctuates between like 12 and 18%, and you do this like once every 10 seconds. So you're healing your entire raid, you're healing yourself with this, and you're healing yourself with your Inspired Focus, which is going to be healing yourself for 1% every time you spend a focus. There's a reason why this spec is in such high demand right now, and it's because you're doing a lot of raid healing. It's not uncommon for a really good Watchman Sentinel to out-heal like an average story mode healer that isn't quite sure what they're doing yet. You will do a lot of raid healing. There's a reason why this spec is in such high demand. So, what we're doing here is you convert your 30 stacks of centering into a Zen state. All your dots do a bunch of crit damage, and additionally, you're going to heal your raid, which is awesome. There's one more interaction here that we haven't talked about yet. I know we're talking about a lot of interactions. This is going to be super simple, all right? Like, I know we're 13 minutes in. I'm going to look like a crazy person. It's dummy easy, all right? We're going to make this dummy easy. Just stick with me, all right? Just stick with me. Because we take Melting Center here, every time we activate our Zen, Force Melt will hit for like 4 times its initial damage. So if you see here, if I activate my Zen, we have our Zen rolling. If I hit Force Melt, boop, it's going to do like 40k damage to the target because it's going to auto crit because we have Zen on, which is pretty darn fantastic. So what we want to be doing is we want to be going Zen into Force Melt, so that way we get these massive crits of Force Melt. It's awesome. Additionally, Force Melt also generates 30 stacks of Zen, which is chef's kiss. All right? Chef's kiss. Now, if you haven't gotten into the fight yet, there are a couple other ways of generating centering besides just like attacking the target and doing dot damage. For one, if you use a regen, so for example, my push-ups toy, or if you just use your Jedi centering regen, you will slowly build up to 30 stacks of centering, which is very nice. Additionally, if you use Valorous Call, which is this green Jedi guy putting a saber to the sky like Luke Skywalker, you will also instantly generate 30 stacks of centering. Most of the time, Valorous Call is used to activate your Inspiration, which is your raid buff. Inspiration just makes all of your damage and healing increase by 10%, which is awesome in a massive raid environment. A lot of times, your raid leader would call for this. So if they ever said like, hey, use your raid buffs, what you kind of want to do is you want to get to 30 stacks of centering, pop your Inspiration, and then pop your Valorous Call, and then go into your Zen into the rest of your rotation. So it's an easy way to essentially force your Inspiration to proc without having to like waste a centering on it, because Zen is very, very important to our rotation. So let's break it down one more time to make sure we're all on the same page. Generating focus. Leap, Zealous Strike, Force Melt, which is also a dot. Passively generating focus through our dots ticking and creating the target. And then if we have to, strike. Our dots, as mentioned previously, Force Melt and Cauterize, straightforward, hit the target. Overload Saber, 3 stacks on ourselves, hit the target 3 times, it'll slowly build up to 3 stacks of burning, so that way we have our dots on the target at all times. When we hit our Zen, it's gonna glow, it's gonna be beautiful. Hit our Zen button, it's gonna do a whole bunch of dot damage, because they're all gonna be critting all the time. It's gonna be healing ourselves, it's very, very nice. But what about the times when we're not just like applying dots to the target? What are we doing between applying all these dots, etc.? Well, I'm glad you asked me. We are following a very simple priority system when it comes to the rest of our abilities here. Let's talk about some of these primary damaging abilities. The first is going to be Merciless Slash. Merciless Slash does like, 26k between, or if it crits like 34k damage to the target, it's a great little ability. Additionally, every time you use Merciless Slash, the cooldown of Merciless Slash will be reduced until you have it like once every 8 seconds. It's very nice. You can see that's what this little Merciless buff here is. Once you reach 4 stacks of this, you know that your Merciless Slash is coming off a cooldown as fast as possible. Merciless Slash is the most important ability in our filler priority here. You want to be using Merciless Slash pretty much every time you're in a filler slot. It's pretty darn fantastic. The next most important filler here is going to be our Twin Saber Throw every time that it is glowing. Every time you do dot damage to the target, you have like a 20% chance to proc your Twin Saber Throw. When you have a glowing Twin Saber Throw, it will do like double damage, and then it will make your next slash or dispatch auto crit. It's a great little ability. It doesn't consume any focus, which is very nice, especially with this spec when we're so hungry for focus all the time. It's a great way to, for one, just do a whole bunch of damage, and then for 2, give us those auto crits, which is going to be giving us focus, and then for 3, just like not consuming focus and giving our passives time to regenerate focus is very, very nice. All right, sorry about that. My recording crashed. The next important ability in our priority tree here is going to be our Dispatch. Dispatch is only usable in targets below 30% health, so it's our little execute ability here. It's going to do like 22,000 damage. It's a very straightforward ability. Just hit it, and then it does damage. Like, it's the most straightforward ability we have here in our priority system, aside from like Slash. We'll talk about that in a second. The next most important ability is our Blade Barrage. Blade Barrage does, a fair bit of damage, like 16,000 damage, but it also doesn't consume focus. You're gonna notice a pattern here of the abilities that don't consume focus are like, chef's kiss to us, because this spec is very, very hungry at all times. So Blade Barrage does like 16,000 damage. Not bad, not bad. It also doesn't consume focus, so it is the 4th most important ability in our priority system here. Now, I come to the unfortunate part of the video here where I inform you that most of the time you're going to be just spamming Slash. Slash will tick our Cauterize. It has a good chance to be critting, and it's just going to be keeping damage on the target very, very frequently. You're going to find times when all these abilities are going to be on cooldown, and you're going to literally spam Slash like 5 times in a row. That's totally okay. It is a great little filler ability here. It is the lowest technically in the priority system, but it's a great way to be kind of pumping out numbers. how our primary generating ways, our abilities fit into this is that if you get below like 3 to 4 focus, I try to use my Zealous Strike then. That way you get up to like 9 focus and then can easily juggle from there throughout the rest of the rotation. But for the most part, when you are in our filler positions here, you just kind of follow this little priority system, and then you should be good to go. Just the most important ability is Minister Slash, then Dual Saber Throw when it's glowing, Dispatch if it's available, Blade Barrage, and then spam Slash as often as possible. A lot of these abilities have a pretty long cooldown, so a lot of time you'll just be using Slash, and then when you get to like 3 or 4 focus, use Zealous Strike, and you should be ready to rock and roll. Now, I know I've thrown a whole bunch at you, but here's the good news, all right? If you can count to 8, you can play this spec, all right? If you can count to 8, you can play Watchman and be perfectly fine. So here's what we're going to do. Every single ability that we use, I'm going to say a number, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, you get the idea, up to 8, all right? Here are the rules. When I say 1, we're going to use our Overload Saber in combination with any ability. So 1, Overload Saber with any ability. 2 is a filler. Easy peasy, follow the priority system. 3 is going to be Zen into Force Melt. All right, so Zen into Force Melt. Let me just quickly build 30 century stacks here. So again, 1, Overload Saber into any ability. 2 is a filler. 3 is Zen into Force Melt. Then 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all filler abilities, just following this basic priority system. And that's it. Literally, that's all you need to know. All you need to know is 1 is Overload Saber with any ability. 2 is any filler. 3 is Zen into Force Melt. And then 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you just fill. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So again, I'm gonna beat this into your skull. All right. 1, Overload Saber. Any filler, hit the target, please. Any filler ability. 2, filler. 3, Zen into Force Melt. 4 is a filler. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all fillers. Begin again. 1, 2, 3 is Zen into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all fillers. Begin again. Overload Saber with any ability. 2, 3 into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Begin again. 1, 2, 3 Zen into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and begin again. 1 is Overload Saber. 2, Zen into Force Melt for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1 is Overload Saber. 2, 3 Zen into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1 is Overload Saber. 2, 3 Zen into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all fillers, etc., etc., etc. Here's the great news. Because 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are all based on this basic priority system here, if you mess it up, it's not that big of a deal. Like, obviously, you're going to do more damage if you follow this priority system to the letter, right? If you nail every single ability over and over and over again, perfectly hitting your windows, etc., you're obviously going to do more damage. But the world doesn't end if you go, you have your abilities running, and I used Blade Barrage when I should have used my Merciless Slash. The world did. I used a Slash when I could have used my Twin Saber Throw. No, the world doesn't end. Just do better next button. It's fun. Okay, so you're 1 second slow on your highest priority ability. Okay, that's fine. The world doesn't end. Just make sure that you're getting Overload Saber in 1 and 2. And so what we're doing here is we're setting up to have 3 stacks of Overload Saber on the target when we use our Zen, right? So here's why we're using these abilities in this position. When you use Overload Saber in the 1 position here, you're setting it up so that way you will have 2 stacks of Overload Saber on the target when you first go into this, or into Zen. You can hit Zen, and then Force Melt will be on the target, and then you'll have 3 stacks. So that way, all of our dots are going to get the most benefit out of our Zen. That's why we're using these abilities here. Just that way, we maximize the amount of damage we're getting out of all of our dots. And that's basically just it. So, again, one more time. To beat it into your skull, we need to use Overload Saber on 1 with any ability. 2, 3 is Zen. Zen into Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are our fillers. 1, 2, 3 to Force Melt. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Literally just like sit down in a dummy and practice that over and over again until your fingers bleed, and you will be perfectly fine. Let's quickly talk about our defensive cooldowns that we get automatically. Rebuke is a great little ability here. Rebuke will reduce all your damage taken by 20%. It lasts for 10 seconds, up to a duration of 30 seconds though, because every time you get attacked when you have Rebuke on, the duration will be refreshed. Additionally, every time you're attacked when you have Rebuke on, you will deal like 3k damage to the target, which isn't a lot if you're just getting hit like once. But if you have like a dot applied to you, as someone in the Annihilation guide mentioned, if you have like a dot applied to you, you can totally fluff with this. Just say like, hey, don't cleanse me, don't cleanse me. And then you can totally fluff like 70k damage out of your Rebuke, because if the dot's put on you and you just Rebuke it, you're doing a whole bunch of damage for free. It's awesome. You can also like kind of fluff this if you like stand in things you shouldn't be standing in. Just like don't tell your healers, all right? If you're out healing them, then it's okay. Otherwise, just like don't get caught. All right. You didn't hear that from me, but you can totally fluff with this. Additionally, we have our Saber Ward. Saber Ward will increase your defenses by 50%, and we'll give you a flat 25% DR from force and tech attacks. So it's an okay defensive ability. Like it's not great, but if it's a poke in the eye, it's pretty okay. Finally, everyone will have their Force Camouflage. Force Camouflage is our threat dump here. It will reduce your threat by 50%, and then it will also put you into stealth, which is great for PvP. In PvE, stealth is kind of wonky right now, though, so like don't rely on this to get you out of combat, but if you need to, you totally can. Finally, we have our Transcendence here. Transcendence is just like the best ability in the game because it makes you go fast. Vroom. Vroom. If you have tanks that have abilities or that are being cast on them that need to run away, Transcendence will be their best friend, and they will love you forever for it. On top of all the healing, on top of all the movement speed, you're also going to be doing a whole bunch of damage. So, I think that's everything. If you have any questions, if I missed anything, if I'm a moron, let me know in the comments below. We're getting to the rest of the guides slowly but surely. Thank you as always for your support. If you feel like, liking, commenting, subscribing. You want to smash that subscribe button, bro? I mean, what if we subscribed under the Biggs video? Ooh, woo. Is that really how we end the video? Yes. Yes, it is.